Early 2015, I felt a lump literally like on the outside of my right breast. And I was very lucky, the doctor said, to where it was, because sometimes this cancer is very invasive and it's usually more internal. And so I thought I need to get this checked out. So in May of 2015, I went and got this checked out. And after my mammogram, they said, you have nothing, you don't have cancer. And I thought, gosh, I've never had this lump before and it's hard, everything they say to look for. So I went and got an ultrasound. And the ultrasound came back inconclusive, but the doctor's like, well, it looks a little irregular. I don't like it, but I think you're fine. You're only 45, just come back in a year. And you know when you get that feeling and just something isn't sitting with you, that intuition, I guess, your gut. And so I sought out this surgeon that does a lot of work with breast cancer patients in Park City. And she said, I don't like this. She said, you're gonna be in my office in 48 hours. And sure enough, she decided to take out the lump because of my history, and it was triple positive breast cancer. And she was shocked. She called me on June 10th and she said, I'm so sorry. She said, you have triple positive breast cancer. She said, I really honestly thought this was gonna be nothing, but she just wanted to do her due diligence. And so, you know, that phone call you get just changes your life in an instant. Made me think of my daughters, because my husband and my daughters are like everything. And so my second thought was, okay, this is a wake-up call, and I'm gonna do everything I can to understand how I can have this not come back. Because for me, I was afraid, but I also felt very empowered that cancer is a process and a lesson. Throughout this cancer journey, the one thing I've learned is I can't let myself down. And it's always been about everybody else. And so I think learning to not let myself down means every day I make little choices for me, which in turn helps them, right? I think it's almost like a reversal of priorities. Throughout this process, you learn how much you matter, and it feels good. And then it's like what you do with that information, right? What you can do to make yourself better, so that in turn I can take care of my husband and my daughters. So when you get the diagnosis, I actually took a couple months to do some research. I mean, I did the lumpectomy right away, but after a couple months of research, because of the type of cancer I had, I still felt 3 doctors said that I should still do chemo, radiation, and I had already done the surgery. And so on August 27th, I had my first round of these hardcore chemos, and I asked my doctor, I said, hey, I'm a little bit sensitive to medicine. Can you maybe do a lower dose? I just know how I react. And he goes, oh, everybody says that. And he told me to eat pizza and ice cream. So all these red flags were going off, but then you kind of still, you know, you just kind of still, like you're in this herd. It's like you just do what you're told to do. And even though I thought I was thinking it through, you still sort of instinctually on a subconscious level trust what the doctors say, even though you've done all this research. I ended up getting the round of chemo, and 7 days later, I was in the ICU, and I literally was almost died. So my white blood cells were at 0. They were shoving antibiotics in my body. At one point, I had had 17 antibiotics in a 6-day period, and they were giving me everything was a blur. It's almost like you're not even in your body. It was like my body was dying and I was just witnessing it. I couldn't do the mind over matter. I'm a pretty tough person, and it was just, I was so toxic. I couldn't even breathe very well. I had oxygen machine. It was scary. My hair still stayed in until about 2 weeks after treatment, and then it all fell out. And so I had my best friend and one of my husband's best friends, they shaved their heads for me, which I thought was very sweet. And it was on my 19th anniversary on Sunday, and I was just horrible, and I made a decision to live. Literally, I could barely get up to go to the bathroom. My eyes were black. I looked like I was gonna die, and I looked in the mirror and I said, no. I said, I'm not going this way. I said, and I knew right then, and I still don't know exactly what the voice was, but this cancer had a purpose for me to help people like Ty and Charlene spread this word, so no one has to be in this hospital bed like me wondering if their kids are gonna have a mother tomorrow. It's just not right. And so I chose at that moment to incorporate this in every thread of my body. This is my purpose, to help spread this message. As of today, I'm cancer-free, which is great. It feels great. Puts a smile on my face every time I say that, no matter how many times I say it. But I did a lot of testing. So I did an MRI, I did a lot of thermography to stay on top of that, and I did the onco testing in Greece, which I really highly recommend for people. It was such a great baseline for when I had cancer, and then to see where my body's at today is just wonderful. They said on paper, the circulating tumors, I look like someone who's never had cancer. So that was like the best report I've gotten. I've also done ultrasound, MRI, and then I've done a lot of blood work. So definitely testing my hormones. Cancer is not a death sentence, and you'll hear that a lot. Sometimes it can be a gift, and you have time to make your decision, to think, to do what feels right. And I always say to trust your intuition. Your body, your mind, your heart knows what you need, and you can do this. And by doing and going through this path and going on this journey, you're gonna change not only your life, but you're probably gonna change a lot of people's lives around you. So.